Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Yarnflakes podcast. My name is Audrey, I am a knitwear designer from the southwest of France, and this is a podcast. Starting well, this is a podcast where I talk about everything that I am making. Thank you so much for joining me for this video. I hope you're doing very well. I have a little bit of an admin catch-up to do for potential previous watchers of the podcast who might be wondering what has happened. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and if you're not interested, please check the description of the video and you will find the timestamps to the actual start of the podcast and the knitting content. So if you've been previously on my channel, you may remember that I have been doing podcasts in English and in French for a long time. Now for quite a few years I've been doing the same video in both languages and publish it about at the same time, and I just was not able to do this anymore. It's been weighing on me honestly for far longer than it should have. I have been quite bored with my content on this channel for a year and a half or something. It just was really overwhelming to have to do essentially the same video twice, about every couple of weeks, and it's just like was not working anymore for me. So I have decided to change things up. I'm actually quite happy that I did, because I'm not someone who usually does that, who usually listens to herself. I just tend to just keep doing the thing, you know, and think that the mood is gonna pass, and I just get burned out and I don't want to have anything to do with the thing that has burned me out at all. I didn't want this to happen with video making, because I do enjoy it as a means to share and also as kind of a creative outlet. So I really didn't want to get completely off making YouTube videos because I wasn't listening to what I actually wanted to do. And I've came to the decision that my problem was really feeling that I had to always make the same content in both languages. It's very time consuming. So it just was logical to stop that and to change. So the thing is, it also happily coincided with a big shift in my audience. Things have changed throughout the years, because I initially started making only English speaking videos, and I started introducing French ones as well. And for the past year or so, my audience has really shifted, and I don't mean to dismiss the people who were watching the English viewers and say no one was watching them anymore, because that's not true. And I know that you are here, and I'm very sorry that I'm not going to be able to make regular videos in English for you anymore. But I don't want to stop making this content specifically for an English audience at all. So, which is why I am actually making a video in English. The plan for now, which you may have noticed, is something that I've been doing since October. Most of my videos are going to be in French now. I'm making more varied content and I'm having lots of fun. I'm making pattern roundup, more vlog types video. I plan to have different topics addressed, more fun, crafty related content as well. So everything is mostly going to be in French. Now, if you are someone who is able or willing to read subtitles, the subtitles are activated. The automatic and auto-translated English captions are on those videos. Now, it's something that I have to manually activate. I used to think that YouTube did it on its own, but they do not. I need to wait for the video to be processed and then manually approve the captions and the auto-translation. So if you don't see them instantly, they're coming. They're coming once YouTube lets me put them on. I've also taken the opportunity to just check them a bit, and they have significantly improved. It used to be really horrible. The problem was the transcript from French speaking to the text. It was always particularly bad. I don't know why, and it was always quite funny because automatic captions, when I'm speaking English, were always fairly good, like almost perfect, despite me obviously having a foreign accent, making mistakes, mispronouncing things. They were legitimately good, but the French ones were always nonsensical, and it seems to have improved a bit. You know, we need to have one upside to the AI overtaking things, but yeah. So they are very good. Now, not everyone likes captions, so I do plan to make one video in English seasonally. So my idea was to make a recap of the previous seasons and try to match it with the solstice, basically, and it's gonna be every 3-4 months. So we are approaching the winter solstice with the holidays and the end of the year, so I am going to make a recap of everything that I've been up to in fall, the patterns that I've released, the projects, the personal projects that I've finished, and also give you an overview of what I'm working on at the moment and what will be coming in the next season. That's my idea. I do not know yet if I'm going to title this fall recap or winter podcast, because I don't want you to see something called winter and then have me talking about autumn stuff. But I don't know. We'll see what I decide. I hope you will enjoy these videos. Now, to my knowledge, YouTube does not allow you to subscribe to a playlist, but if you want to see when I have a new video in English up, everything will be put in the podcast English, in the English podcast episodes playlist. They're all together grouped in that playlist on my channel. And I think you can save those playlists but not get notifications on them. I will try to do a good job of notifying people on Instagram when I have an English video that is available. So that's it for the news. I am having lots of fun at the moment with my videos, and I'm really excited to be talking to you about everything that I've been making, because I don't have to do the same thing twice. I just have the energy again to describe my projects and share them with you. So I'm going to start with my own designs that I have released since October, basically. I've decided to just go back in time and move along closer to us. So I'm going to start. You can find timestamps for the different sections of the video in the description under the video. So if you want to skip a project, find a section in particular, feel free to look at this. I also put links to everything that I talk about, the patterns, the yarns that I will be mentioning, as well as my social media and my pattern shops and my Patreon page if you would like to support my business and have access to some behind the scenes contents and free patterns in exchange for the Patreon subscriptions. So first up, the designs that I have released, and the first one that I'm going to talk to you about is a design that was released in October, and it is the Figures cardigan. So this is a trunker. This is a jacket coat cardigan in all over colorwork. So it is a drop shoulder shape. It is worked from the bottom up. So you start with a half twisted rib, and then you join in around because it is sticked up, and you work the rest of the project in the round. As long as you are doing color work, you are always in the round, so you do not have to purl color work. You can see here my stick. I have put a ribbon on it for it to be kind of neat, and there is an all over pattern, which is this sort of geometric random lines, which are really intuitive to work, obviously, because you can clearly see where you should put your next collar stitches. And you just work up until the underarm, then you put more sticks at the arms. Also, you can see here that I have not put a ribbon here, so you can see my mediocre neatening of my stick. And you continued working the upper body in the round. You also make a stick for the neck. It has its own little ribbon here, so you do a round neck shaping here with some decreases. At this point you need to maintain the pattern as established, but the pattern really guides you here, and it tells you which stitch specifically you're starting each section with, so you can easily find where you should resume the pattern after you've bound off some stitches for the neck and for the underarm, so you don't have to sort of guess on the chart where you are. And once that's done, you just cut the stick, you bound them off, and you work some shoulder short rows in twisted rib here. I thought it was kind of a neat detail to allow us to have a neat shaping without having to work collar work flat. You join the shoulders with the 3 needle bind off. You cut the sticks open. You pick up stitches around the armhole to work the sleeves, and the sleeves are straight and gathered just before the cuff, and they're still worked in this motif. And then for the front, you pick up the button bands and the collar. So this is a really detailed pattern. There's lots of detailed instructions on how to track the pattern, how to manage the sticks. There are a number of sizes, and because the chart is quite large, there is a little difference between the odd and the even numbered sizes at the back, because you will need to, for some sizes, work half a repeat at the back, while other sizes have a full repeat at the back. This allowed me to have size increments that were decent and not have sizes be spaced by like 20 centimeter, which would have been a shame, since you wouldn't have as much freedom in the ease that you pick. Mine is with a lot of ease, obviously, and it is worked in decay weight, so it actually knits up fairly quickly. It's using Gynt from Sandnes Garn, the one that has all the hype at the moment, and rightfully so. I really like it personally. I've known some podcasters that I follow and love to watch. They were a bit disappointed because they heard a lot of people say that it was soft, and when they got it, it's not Merino soft. But I think that when I do find it soft for a Norwegian wool, which I think is the thing here. If I compare it to some Rauma Garn yarns, some Hillesvåg, this is soft in comparison to that. But obviously, if you're super sensitive and you want something that is really next to skin friendly, that is not so much of an outerwear garment, maybe it won't be for you. But it does make a lovely fabric in color work, even though this sort of pattern, since you're having such long lines in one color only, it's easy to have puckering because you keep changing your colors on the same spot. But with this yarn, it's smoothed out beautifully. There are floats to catch. As you can see, in some areas there are longer pieces of one color where you need to catch your floats. It's not the most difficult float catching rhythm, but yeah, it might not be suitable for a first project in color work, but if you've already done just a little bit of it, you will be fine. And if you're willing to tackle sticks, which sticking is not a difficult technique, it's like the execution of it is not difficult, and I've been talking a lot about the process of it, trying to reassure people because I know it scares a lot of people. We just adopted a cat, so I'm not sure if the noises are my partner's or the cat. I suspect it's my partner. So the thing with sticking is that it's not as end all be all as you'd think. You have a lot of room to correct if you have done something wrong. There are few steps to follow. You should secure the stick if you're not confident. Lots of people don't, and that actually also works. But for someone who's not confident, you secure the stick. You have several ways of doing this. I like to just sew a line along the two sides of the stick. I use my sewing machine. I don't know how to use my sewing machine for anything else, so you don't need to be an expert sewist for this. But you can also sew by hand. And then I use a crochet reinforcement, which is mostly, like, it's perhaps a poor name. It doesn't reinforce the stick so much as it traps the edges of it, and it makes a more neater edge. And then you have to sew down the stick to the side so it's laying flat, which is what you see here. And all those steps, they add a safety layer. So if you're sewing your line, you didn't secure properly at the top of the bottom, which is my personal specialty. I'm very good at this. And some stitches are starting to unravel. If when you do your crochet reinforcement, it's a bit loose and it's not tightening all the strands properly, I also do this. Then you have the last step of actually sewing down your stick, and this also works fine. If you're having the patience and ability of a 6-year-old child, when you're sewing down your stick, as you can see here, you just put a ribbon on top of it. So yeah, sticking, it's not like you're gonna cut your knitting and it's gonna be, oh my god, horrible, everything is off and it's ruined forever. You can correct course, all the different steps of the stick are securing the previous one furthermore. There are other techniques as well which you might want to have fun looking into. I personally really want to try a sandwich, which is a way of trapping the stick by working a double layer thing, if I understood correctly. I really want to try this technique, but in any case, my personal method is linked in the pattern, and I encourage people to try it on a swatch. Basically, just, you don't even have to make color work, just make a piece of stockinette and try sticking, and it actually is a lot more reassuring when you're doing it on a swatch than on something that you've been knitting for hours, obviously. But yeah, should you not want to stick it, you can obviously just work it flat, just ignore all the stick cast-ons and instructions basically, and you can just keep going back and forth and you will have a cardigan. I've also been asked how to make this into a sweater. Similarly, you should cast on 22 extra stitches at the hem and join in the round, because each repeat is 26 stitches. So basically you're going to replace the bottom band with one motif, and you already had the pattern already has 4 stitches, which are 2 edge stitches on either side. So to compensate for a full repeat, you just need to add 22 more. And when you're casting off stitches for the neck here, you will just need to cast off the extra stitches that you casted on to shape your round neckline. The pattern has all the stitch count that you should achieve every time for the shoulders, etc. So it's fairly intuitive to make. As usual, I tend to design simpler shapes because I like the freedom of modifying them, and I like to be able to just have a kind of impactful motif, or like whether it be color work or texture work. I like to focus on that, and I like knitters to be able to knit something that looks complicated but is actually not so, because you're just focusing on one thing at a time and the actual garment construction remains fairly simple. So yeah, I made mine in black and white because I just thought it would be nice to wear in the winter, and I encourage you to have a look at the project, the testers project, because it looks very different depending on the color that you choose. There's a pink and blue version, which is lovely. Some people have made swatches in pink and gold, which are awesome. There's pink and, not pink, but a more softer contrast works really well with this pattern, because it's such clear lines. Then you can just really go low contrast, like cream and beige works really well. And in the darker end of things, there's a version that is a dark navy and a dark green, and it also is absolutely lovely. So that is it for figures, which I've desperately wanted for it to be colder. It's not cold enough for me to wear it yet. It might be cold enough soon for me to have it as a coat. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. And I think I've talked about everything about this design. Any DK weight will do. I recommend woolier yarn with mostly sheep wool content, but you do you. And yeah, I hope you like it as much as I do. I am really proud of this design. I absolutely love the neck shaping. It just makes like a really nice bombers type jacket, which is really easy to wear for me, despite the obnoxiously graphic pattern on it. Mota? Trying to teach the cat that he in fact can move alone in the house. He seems to be constantly asking permission and not daring to move on his own, except at night, right? So, next up, I have for a few years now done a mystery knit along over August, September, October, and the one for last year was this one. So my mystery knit alongs are always colorwork cowls like this, and this was Dedale, which is now available as a regular pattern, a complete design, and it's a labyrinth. Maybe he will follow my partner up. We'll see. If not, I might have to go get him. So it's actually a labyrinth that work. So you just follow along, and it features some geometric and more organic patterns. You start here with the provisional cast on, and then you work a tube in the round. So it's a double layer cowl, and you just work once and twice the chart, and you just go up. And like I said, there are some dead ends within the labyrinth with different patterns. I absolutely love this flower. And you just go up and up. So obviously this also requires to catch floats quite a lot. I would say that this perhaps is the most difficult of my Wimata. I'm gonna go get him. The cat has arrived. You don't need to meow. I'm here. Yeah. So we adopted him just last week. He came from a refuge. He's 8 years old and he meows. Do you want us to just sit here? Yeah. He's really affectionate and not scared of us at all, which is good, because this way we're able to kind of comfort him rather than just like toying around him to try and reassure him. He just lets himself be reassured. He actually demands to be reassured. But yeah. Can I film the podcast? Are you? No? No, I cannot? Where do you want to go? Do you want to go near your bed? It's near the The radiator, it's warm. No, you just want to be there. Okay, so yeah, this and a previous, really like this one as well. This and the previous Mystery Knit Along are like tied, I guess, for the most difficult. It's still 2 colors, color work in the round, it's fine. The fact that there are so many lines actually make it easier to see. However, it does require managing your tension fairly well. You need to catch floats for quite a lot of consecutive rounds, so you need to make sure not to do it in the same spot for it not to be visible. See, for example, here you always have 3 rounds, which is the path of the labyrinth, and within those 3 rounds you need to catch floats, and you need to make sure not to do it always at the same time. So it's a bit of float managing, but the thing with knitting a cowl like this is that if you mess up your tension or something, it's gonna be on the inside, and you're never gonna see it. Yes? Do you wanna say? No, you don't. Okay. So I recommend again that you use perhaps a yarn that has mostly wool, because this makes color managing float tension so much easier in color work. If you have a yarn that is too slick and slides easily, then it's just going to be more visible if you have a tension problem. I use, like always, for my mystery knit-alongs, the Knitting for Olive Merino, which is a good balance between, it was just hair, I'm just getting rid of my hair. It's a good balance between having a yarn that is very soft, it's merino, and drapey, which is good for an accessory like this, but still being mostly wool, and it just smoothes out the color work really well. I am not someone who has a great tension, just FYI, and you can see that despite that, it's still pretty good. So it's fingering weight. You need 2 colors. You can incorporate a 3rd color, especially at the beginning, because you have some sort of a garden at the entrance and exit of the labyrinth, which is this portion here, where you will then make a grafting to close the tube at the end and form the cowl. So you could have a different contrast color here if you want, or if you're someone who is comfortable making 3 color work, you can just insert there, here and there if you want. You can have fun with that. There is also a way for you to make the cowl longer. So this one measures about 125 centimeter, which is enough for me to make, like, you could wear it like this, but you can also make a double turn, right? If your row gauge is a bit off, or if you want something longer, there are at the end of the pattern additional lines of motifs which you can incorporate in that garden. So this way you can make the cowl longer without breaking the labyrinth. So here in between you will have extra patterns that are in the pattern for you. I really like the exit of the labyrinth as well, with this big kind of large stained glass looking flower. And yeah, the colors I used are Marzipan, which is an interesting neutral color. I really like it from Knitting for Olive. It's like a grayish beige. It's interesting. It's neither cool nor warm, and the contrast color is brown nougat, which is a light caramel. And you could go even lighter in contrast with this design, because there's so many lines. It will still stand out, and it will possibly also make it less of a statement piece, because it will not be as in your face. I have a figurative labyrinth in my cowl, But yeah, sharper contrast of course will also look nice. I would advise against variegation yarns or speckled, just because you rely so much on those geometric lines that, yeah, you might lose some of it if there's variation. But you know, you're free to try. I haven't checked recently the project, so I don't know if someone has tried it successfully. But yeah, I am so happy about how this cowl worked. I was a bit afraid when I was designing it that it would be a bit boring because it's not as varied and sectioned as my previous mystery knit-alongs, which were more small geometric motifs and very different from one another. This has a lot of lines, basically, and I was afraid that the rhythm would not be as much fun, but people have told me that they've still enjoyed it, so I'm very happy. And I do think that it's sort of the most wearable of my cowls because it looks more cohesive and it's not as figurative as some of the other. But yeah, I am very happy with this. You can use any provisional cast on method you like, any grafting method you like. If you hate grafting, you can just do a 3 needle bind off. The only thing is you will need to do it from the right side, because if not, you're going to trap yourself and not be able to turn the cowl over. So you're gonna have the line of the 3 needle bind off here, like a small seam, which will be visible. But since it will be incorporated in this contrast line, it's not so much of an issue. You don't want to stay here because I move too much. Where do you want to go? Let me open the door a bit more. Yeah. You're not going just to meow further, right? Because that's the thing that he does. He leaves and then he meows until we get him back. But that's it for Dedale. I already have so much hair, you see, so much hair everywhere. I already have the theme picked up for next year's Mystery Knit-along, and I'm very excited about it. I've teased it a bit on Instagram. I like to use emotes to sort of, like, emoticon smileys, I don't know the word, to sort of tease next year's Mystery Knit-alongs. And so the theme will be, I used a wave, a boat, a mermaid, an eye, a pig, a yarn ball. I think that's it. I think it's, yeah, I don't think I've included something else. But yeah. This one I think was the most obvious of my hints. The previous years people have been a bit confused by my attempts, but yeah. So, moving along. More colorwork. So I had a fairly heavy colorwork autumn and fall. I don't know why I was so determined into releasing all of my colorwork designs at once. I have a pair of colorwork socks for you. You're back? Wow, thank you. Do you want to be on your bed? Do you want to try? You can go, see? No? What you want is just for me to pet you endlessly, which I will do later. So, these are the Sinope socks, which are a colorwork pair of socks, fairly easy. So they're knitted cuff down. It's just my preferred method of, you don't like my mess? You don't like all the projects that I plan to show people that are just laying on the floor and it's taking up all of your space. With a twisted rib cuff and a colorwork pattern on the leg. So this is charted for different sizes. You increase your stitch count just before the colorwork, just to compensate the fact that colorwork does not stretch as much as stockinette. And you have this simple pattern, which is very intuitive, very intuitive to knit. I'm gonna try and put him on his bed. Neighbor has also decided to vacuum clean, which I hope you can't hear. And yeah, so I used Retrosaria Mondim, which I do like for sock yarns. Sock yarns tend to, you really just climb if you want to be petted. It's a natural sock yarn, so it doesn't have any nylon, it's not superwash, which may not work for some people. For me, the way I wear my socks, it works. I have pairs in Mondim that have been worn for a few years now, and yes, and they're fine. And I really like this soft contrast. This actually looks very good with variegated yarns. You can see some testers and knitters versions of it, and it looks really cool. The pattern includes a double contrast chart, so if you have a light background and a darker contrast, unlike me, you have charts for it. So this way it just makes it, it's also the case for the figures cardigan, by the way, which I forgot to mention. It's just easier whenever it's possible, when there's not 2 billion charts. I like to make the double contrast, because if you're trying to follow a chart that has a white dot on a black background and you're having a black dot on a white background as your yarn, as your color choice, it's kind of confusing, especially if it's a geometric pattern like this with lots of little dots. So I provided all the double charts, so you can choose which one suits you. There's also charts for each size, so don't print the entire pattern, just check the chart list and only get what you need. Once you're done the color work, you go back down in stitch count and you can work 2 different heels, a heel flap and gusset like I did here, or a German shoulder heel. And the rest of the foot is in simple stockinette with a rounded toe and a grafting at the end, which is my go-to stock method really. And I just liked to implement this fun colorwork pattern. You have a jog at the beginning of the round here, you can see on this side, and the pattern instructs you when you work the heel to, on one sock, work it on the first half of the stitches and on the other sock on the second half of the stitches, which allows you to have the neat side wherever you want it. Basically, you can have the jog hidden on the inside of your leg because it's reversed. So it makes it more difficult for me to photograph, because if I want to lay the socks flat, well, one is neat and one has the jog, but when you're actually wearing them, the neat edge is on the same side of your leg, basically. So those are the Sinope socks, and I've been wanting to make more colorwork socks using Mondim, and I have some plans for next year. What do you think? Next up, well, it's what I'm wearing actually, so this is gonna be a problem. I have released the Pivoine cardigan. So Pivoine is peony in French, and this is a simpler design than what I've shown you previously, because yes, I do those as well. This is a drop shoulder v-neck cardigan, which is buttoned, which is knitted from the top down. So you start with the fronts with the v-neck shaping, which is really simple. Then you pick up stitches on the shoulders and you work the back. You join everything at the underarm to work the body in one piece, back and forth, because it's a cardigan, so you still knit it flat. And at the bottom, so I'm not gonna get up because I cannot. At the bottom of the cardigan, you have a lace detail, which is a mock eyelet cable Really easy to do. There is a video tutorial in the pattern to show you how to do it. It just involves passing a stitch over. It's not really a cable, but it gives the impression of one. So you have this fine detail at the hem, and then you have one by one ribbing. And once you're done with that, you start the double knitted button bands. So you pick up stitches all along the fronts, you cast on stitches at the end, and you work back and forth on the button band stitches perpendicularly. So you go like this basically, and every time you reach the cardigan edge, you attach the button band to the stitches that you've been picking up all around by working a decrease, which you can see it gives a little bit of a textured edge here. There is a full video tutorial linked in the pattern for the entire process. So if you've never done such a button band, everything is explained. It's not a difficult method, it's time consuming, because you're essentially knitting a stockinette tube, basically, as you can see. And you're using smaller needles, so it does take a while to go all around, but it's fairly simple. You also have the buttonholes in the video tutorials, which implies that you cut your yarn to knit each part of the buttonholes separately. I have tried different methods to avoid cutting the yarns, and I had mentioned this while I was knitting on it. I don't remember if it was in an English podcast, but if you don't want to have to cut your yarn to make those buttonholes in a double knitted button bands, you have other methods. However, they don't work very well with big buttons. I have experimented, but because I wanted to use such large buttons, it just doesn't work. What you can do, the simpler thing, is just to bind off stitches, and on the next row you recast them on, right? Another method, which is a little bit more discreet, is to work a yarn over. So you knit until the halfway point of your button band, you yarn over, you make a double yarn over at least. On the following row, you knit that yarn over. You need to kind of trap it once, because if you decrease it instantly, it just is hidden in your double knitting, right? And on the third row only, you can decrease that yarn over to go back to your original stitch count. However, the thing is, these two methods don't work with large buttons. I would say up to 15 millimeter you can try. However, anything bigger than this, and you need to make a hole that is so big that it looks awful. Basically, you need to cast off, because this is not elastic at all. You need to cast off almost the entire width of the button band, or you need to make like 4 or 5 yarn overs, and it just looks completely wrong. And it's such a shame, because it takes so long to make the button band that if it doesn't look good, it's a shame, I think. So I just included the usual method of cutting the yarn and working each part of the buttonhole separately in the pattern, because it's what worked with the large buttons like the ones I used. Feel free to experiment with the methods I described if you plan on using smaller buttons. Yeah, one thing about the button band, if you're not familiar with picking up stitches, working different part of a garment in a different gauge, because you're using a different fabric or different needles, you might be worried with how it looks before it blocks. So your button band needs to be tighter than the rest of your cardigan, because if not, with time, it's going to get floppy and loosen, and it's not nice. And I think a lot of people have been used to knitting the button bands at the same time of the body. I personally don't really like that because of that reason. The button bands are not firm enough and they don't hold their shape. Now there is a way to combat this by you can attach a smaller needle on the end of your rows and use those to knit the button band, and or you should work short rows so that you don't knit the button band on every row of the cardigan body. Too complicated. And it makes something that should be like it's all over stockinette, you know. It should be just relaxing, and you don't need to count anything, you don't need to think about anything. So I just didn't want to have that method in that would overly complicate the technique. So I personally preferred to incorporate, for this design, I chose to incorporate a picked up button band. But you may worry that it might be too tight, because what happens when you're working it, it's gonna raise a little bit. See, now it's raising because I'm holding it like an idiot, but your button band might lift at the bottom like this, right? You may have the impression that it's too tight because it's raising. Now, if it's only raising, it's actually good, because when you're going to block it, you're gonna be able to lay it completely flat and it's gonna smooth everything else. So if it's only lifting at the end, that's fine. What you don't want is for your fabric to be crumpled like this. If you notice that your fabric on the body of your cardigan is gathering next to your button band, that means that your button band is in fact too tight. So if that happens, if you know you're a tight knitter in general, you can pick up more stitches. So the pattern instructs you to pick up 2 out of 3 stitches. Try to pick up 3 out of 4 if you know that you're a tight knitter. But again, if it lifts at the bottom before it's blocked, it's normal. It's normal that things don't lay flat when they're not blocked, okay? Don't panic. And I've noticed knitters who are maybe not so confident in working cardigans and working things in parts that you need to pick up, etc. Sometimes they expect the product to look perfectly flat and put in shape before blocking. That often does not work. It also highly depends on the type of yarn that you're using, etc. But yeah, just don't worry if you're not seeing any crumpling. The pattern mentions that as well. So everything that I'm saying is written in the pattern. So if I'm overwhelming you with all the information, don't worry, it's all written there. And finally, you are going to work the sleeves. So you pick up stitches around the armhole. Now these are very wide sleeves. They're intending to be loose. And you have a mock cable detail on the top here, which is the width of this panel is adapted for each size, so it's kind of proportionate. And the sleeves have a little bit of decreases here at the top, but most of the decreases are done at the end before the cuff, and you end with the 1x1 rib cuff. If you want a narrower sleeve, more fitted sleeves, just start the decreases. You see my decreases only start here, and they're spaced like this. So you have room to decrease faster if you want more fitted sleeves. All the measurements of all my designs are on the Ravelry page, and the last picture you always have the schematic. Is it like schedule? Can you say schedule? Can you say schematic? Does it work with any words that start with like this? Anyway, schematic, and the measurements are all public on the Ravelry pages. If you're going on my PayHip store, there is a preview file that you can download for free, which also has all the measurements, because I just want you to see the measurements before you buy the pattern, just because our body types are so different that sometimes we need to modify something just simply because we might have a different upper arm to bust ratio. I've started to include the ease that I have at my upper arm in my ease recommendation as well, just so you know that I tend to have larger arms. So if you see something on me and you're wondering why we have the same bust size, but your sleeves don't look the same on you as they do on me, it's because I have a wider upper arm than you, basically. So you can check all the measurements of my garment designs before, and if you notice that something might not fit you, feel free to ask me before you buy the pattern how you could modify it, because for some designs like this one, super easy to modify. Like I say, you can even pick up less stitches from the start, or you can decrease really faster and it's going to make a huge difference. So this is super easy. Some designs might be a little bit more complicated to modify, so I will be able to tell you what such a modification would involve, whether it's the sleeve circumference, the armhole depth, the body and sleeve length, which usually is completely customizable. There might be exception. Make the neck wider, make the neck tighter, add waist shaping, etc. I will tell you how difficult of a modification that can be. Oh my god. So you can decide if that's something that you want to do, or if it's too much work. Anyway, for this one, again, simple shape, simple to modify. And yes, so this is Pivoine, which is worked in fingering weights, so it's a lighter cardigan. And I've been really enjoying wearing it. It just works really well for the temperature that we have here, and I love the color. So I have used Hobbii yarns, Hobbii Friends, the extra fine merino. This is the colorway 47. Do you like it? And so knitting with this yarn was not the best experience. It had a lot of spinning irregularities. I've put it back on like a and it's completely twisted. It had a lot of irregularities in the spinning, things that I've honestly never seen in a industrial made yarn. It looks like my own handspun, and it's not a good thing, because my handspun is not good. Basically, some of the plies like were poking out and were tightly twisted, which if you've ever spun yarn yourself, you know why that happens. If it's just that some of the plies are not going at the same speed into the yarn, and they just poke out, and there are so many of them. Like on some balls, like every 10 row or something, I had one of them. And the thing is, I can't do anything because I'm gonna take it off again because I forgot to show you those things. I can't, like, it's not like there's a knot, right? The yarn is not cut, it's just one ply that is poking out, and it just makes the fabric really irregular. You can see here, see? It's just one ply that is poking out, and it was so frequent that like I would have needed to cut the yarn. Here's another one. Here. I would have needed to cut the yarn every 6 or 8 rows, and that really bothered me because it made the fabric really irregular and did not look good. At such, yeah, right, I agree. At such a tight gauge, having something that was not neat was bothering me a bit, because the thing is, this yarn is super elastic. It's like the most elastic thing I have ever seen. It's listed as a sport weight because it has only 160 meters per 50 grams. However, if you work it at a sport weight gauge, in my opinion, it's way too loose. It's completely see-through. It's not looking good. So I had to knit it at a fingering weight gauge of, it's 26 stitches. Which means that if it's that tight, it should have been knitter, but it's not. And you can see my short rows, for example, which are pretty badly visible. So yeah, I was not so happy with that while I was knitting it. And the thing is, I'm willing to accept defects in a yarn if it's a cheap yarn, right? but it's not that cheap because you still need to buy a fingering weight's worth quantity of it, because again, you can't knit it at a sport weight gauge, so you need to buy more balls of yarns because there's only 160 meters per ball. You need more balls, so it ends up being more expensive. And compared to other merino fingering weight like Filcolana Arwetta or other brands and things, it actually ended up being more expensive for poor quality, basically. And it's a bit of a shame because the color range is gorgeous and it's soft, it has a beautiful drape. So the thing is, I'm wearing this as much as I can to see how it holds. So far, pretty well. No peeling, no excessive peeling, I mean. It's holding its shape well, it's not like, it's doing good. So I might consider using it again, but not alone. I would double it with perhaps Dermo hair, try this. But yeah, I don't think I would knit it again as a single strand because I have other merino fingering weight that are much nicer and don't have all these spinning issues and don't end up requiring 14 balls of yarn at around 8 euros the ball. The thing is with Hobbii, the more you buy, the lower the cost goes, but even though it was still not worth it for me, basically. So yeah, I tried. But I do love the color, so there's that. Let me know if you use this yarn. Did you have a similar experience with the spinning quality of it? Did I just get a bad batch, right? Is it just unlucky? Have you held it together? Have you held it together with something else, a single strand of mohair or something? And what do you think of that? So let me know if you're familiar with the Hobbii Friends Extra Fine Merino. What do you think of it? Because so far I'm like, not great, not too great, right, Mota? His name is Mota, like the Wool Dreamers yarn, but we didn't choose it. That was the name that he had at the refuge. So I thought it was really good, so I just kept it. Now, moving on, just sliding. Yeah, because I'm moving around, and so you should really have stayed on the bed. Next up, I have a re-release of a pattern that was initially published in Pom Pom magazine last winter. Are we all absolutely devastated about Pom Pom closing? Yeah. But last winter I published the Dagian garment, The Garbage Truck. Be right back. Okay, I think it's far enough now that you can't hear it. So, Dagian is a multi-option garments, basically. I'm going to insert here a picture of the sample that I had sent Pom Pom, which was a vest sample. Unfortunately, it was lost. But basically, it is a vest or it is a sweater. It is a V-neck garment or a round neck garment, and you can put bubbles or not if you want. So I have a bunch of samples to show because Pom Pom, because they couldn't send me back the vest, they kindly offered to send me back the sweater version that they had knitted, which is this gorgeous petrol blue in GC Rennie Supersoft, which was the yarn initially used for the design, which, unlike other of the Supersoft type yarns, this one actually is soft, which is fun. And it's just absolutely lovely blue with really lots of nice nuance. It's much darker than what you see on camera, but yeah. And this is the sweater version with sleeves and a round neck. And I have made a couple other designs, samples. So another sweater with round neck, because I didn't know I was gonna get this one, so I thought I needed the sweater with round neck, but now I got two. This is knitted in BoucleLaine's Merino Angora, which is classified as a sport weight. It did make a denser yarn. Unlike this yarn, this one has 400 meter to the 100 grams, and it does knit up as a sport weight. The original design uses fingering weight, but you can get away with live fingering to sport weight at that gauge. And this is the colorway Carrosse, which is a lovely orangey, mustardy color. And again, this is the sweater with the sleeves and the round neck. And I have made this version, which is a V-neck sweater without the bubbles. So you can see how you can achieve a pretty minimalist looking cool texture sweater if you remove the bubbles. And I love all of the versions. When I submitted the original idea to Pom Pom, I really hesitated between submitting with the bubbles or without the bubbles, because I love both just as much. And yeah, this just is a more wearable piece. This was knitted in Woolbag's Superwash Merino basic, your basic Superwash Merino fingering weight, hand dyed in the colorway Bordeaux, which was gifted to me by the brand. She is a French indie dyer, and I think last year she kindly offered me to send me some things for a giveaway, and at the same time she gifted me these skeins of yarn, and I thought that they would make a lovely simple textured V-neck garment. So this fingering weight one is a bit finer, a bit drapier, not as warm, whereas the orange one is definitely warmer and perfect for now. So this is worked from the bottom up. So you start with the body in a round, you start with the 2x2 rib, and then you start the texture. So it is a very simple and intuitive texture. Basically it's lines of twisted stitches with garter stitch in between, and you have the bubbles, if you choose to make them, which are placed like this. This is kind of me trying to push the boundaries of how I like or do not like bubbles. I've been trying to incorporate bubbles and bubble. I've done a lot of the designs with bubbles, because when bubbles started, when I noticed bubbles for the first time in knitting patterns, I was kind of like, interesting. In some cases I love them, in some cases I really don't. Sometimes if they're clustered in a certain way, I kind of feel like they look like fish eggs. And if they're all alone on the stockinette background, it also bothers me a bit. So I've been just putting bubbles everywhere to try and wrap my head around what is it that makes me like the position of bubbles, and what is it that makes me don't like the position of bubbles. And I think in this case I like it because of the lines in between, and I think that makes it okay for me visually. So yeah, but you can skip them if you don't like. If you do want to make them, these are my lazy bubbles. They're nubs, in fact. You just wrap the yarn a few times around the needles and then you pass them over. It's initially a Japanese crochet bubble method, but I've adapted it to use knitting needles, and there's a video tutorial on the pattern, in the pattern. So you knit in the round until the armhole, then you split front and back, and then you choose to make a round neck or a V-neck. The armhole is quite low and loose. This is because it's a hybrid between the vest and the sweater. And a vest, you kind of want the armhole to be a bit lower. So the armhole is quite wide. If you want a tighter armhole, it's very easy to modify if you're making a round neck, because basically the pattern will instruct you to knit straight for a certain amount of centimeter until you bind off for the neck and start the neck shaping. So you just need to say you want to remove 4 centimeter, well, you remove 4 centimeter here before you bound off for the neck. If you want to make the V-neck, it's a little bit more complicated because you need to rearrange the V-neck decreases. Basically, you need to know the total length of the armhole that you want, and you need to spread the necessary decreases on that length. If your row gauge is different, it might also vary. So if you want to make that modification but you don't know how to do the math yourself, just ask me. I just need to know your row gauge, if it differs from the patterns, and the total armhole depth that you want, and the size that you're making, and I will do the math for you. But yeah, it's still fairly contained. It's not super loose sleeve because it is tapered. As you can see, there are more decreases at the underarm after you've picked up the sleeve and you work them like a normal tapered sleeve until the 2x2 rib cuff. You pick up stitches around the neckline to work the collar, the round one or the v-neck one with a center double decrease at the bottom of the v-neck. So yeah, a super versatile pattern, and you could also make it as a summer top. I'm kind of tempted to make the summer top version for myself. I think I will make a round neck. Basically you just use the vest pattern and you can use a summer friendly yarn. I just have no idea what color I would like, and I think I would make it without bubbles for a summer top. But yeah, I need to get inspiration for the color. But yeah, so Dagian is now available as a single pattern on my pattern shops, and with an updated PDF. So if you have the magazine but you want to have the digital file of the new PDF, you want me to add it to your library on Ravelry, or you want me to send you the file, just send me a message on Instagram, an email, or a message on Ravelry, and I will send it to you. I don't want people to buy twice the pattern if they bought the magazine just because they want the updated file. So that is Dagian, which was my contribution to last winter's pom-pom. Yeah, I'm very, very bummed that pom-pom is no longer going to be publishing things. We're going to talk about this a little bit more later in the year, because I had a design planned for a summer issue, which is not happening, has been cancelled. So yeah, there are things that I need to take care of for this design. But yeah, I'm very grateful to have been able to publish quite a lot of designs over the last 3 years with pom-pom. They've been like one of the best teams to work with. They're really careful in how it's my personal experience. They've been really respectful of my work, really careful of the delays whenever it was cutting it a bit short. And quite frankly, they've been, well, you're sleeping. They've been actually paying the best that I've seen. So yeah, really sad I'm mostly sad because I've really been enjoying their publications as a knitter, and knowing how that I've personally as a designer enjoyed working with them, it made it really good to enjoy their publication as a knitter. They've been publishing things that are quite unique, basically. They've been the most daring, publishing things that are a bit more out there, more experimental, and I've always enjoyed their publications. And that is mostly, like, I'm not sad about losing a business prospect, right? But I'm more sad as a knitter losing such an inspiration and such a source of beautiful pattern that I know have been designed with care. So yeah, anyway, that's it. I'm just really grateful for all the magazine issues that we've had from them, and yeah, that was kind of the sad news this autumn, really. Moving on to happier things. I have just last week, in fact, published. I need to move my arm. I'm very sorry. I have published a free pattern I like to make a free pattern about once a year, as a thank you, because yeah, as a thank you for your support, and yeah, just because I think it's important to provide free patterns so that not only to have accessible like patterns, but also because it gives a sample of the designer's pattern writing style, and you know, sometimes things just don't fit with our brain, and I think it's good to see an example of how a designer works, just so you know if it's gonna vibe with you. I have just published and I'm running out of battery. Let's hope that Mota doesn't attack the dangling battery thread cable. So, scratchy scratchy. Free pattern. This is a shawl slash scarf. This is Mara, which is worked in an all over texture. So you start with an I-cord cast on here, and you continue the I-cord edges on each side, and you increase until you have used half of your yarn, whatever that is, or until you have reached the desired depth for your scarf, shawl, half the total length that you want, because then you just go back decreasing until the other point. So you can use any amount of yarn you have. It's using fingering weight, but you know, you can use another weight and change the gauge if you want, because you can really just make it any length that you want. This is worked in a texture pattern, which is a very simple one, very intuitive. It's quite short repeats, so you really are able to like adjust the amount of yarn that you use, because you're only making 16 rows per repeat, so you don't have to decide, oh, do I have enough yarn to make this huge repeat extra? No, it's quite short. It features 1x1 ribbing, garter stitch, and some eyelets with a centered double decrease, which might be the only special stitch in this design, but there is a detailed description of how you make it, and it just makes this really fun texture. It is charted and written. So this is like my scarf sample, and as you can see, it is pretty long for a mini scarf. I have used about 60 grams of fingering weight yarn because I was silly and I just went ahead compared to what I had planned. But I think that if you work 1, maybe 2 less repeats, you can get away with 50 grams and still have, do not jump on the cable, thank you very much. You can get a pretty decent scarf with only 50 grams of yarn. And this is knitted in Yarnflakes, which is a French indie dyer. Again, superwash merino, basic thing, in the colorway Madame Sauvage, which is a really nice khaki green color. And let me reposition you. There you go. And yeah, you have this small scarf, and I have been knitting a shawl version. That is the version I initially started with, but I thought that the heathered effect of the yarn might not be the best for you to see the texture, even though I love it. And this is going to be a shawl version using 100 gram worth of fingering weight yarn, so 400 meters. I am using Pearl Soho linen quill, which is a beautiful blend of wool, alpaca, and linen. Is that it? Is that wool, alpaca, and linen, or is there silk in it? No, it's wool, alpaca, and linen, which is absolutely lovely. It has all the heathered bits of the linen. Usually these types of yarn that have the vegetable matter poking out, they tend to be a bit scratchy, but this one is not at all. Interesting. Wimota, see, he just went away and now he's meowing. And yeah, so you can see I've reached half of my shawl, so I'm gonna start the decrease now, and you can see the size that I am going to achieve. Basically, it goes all the way up here, and it's going to be a one skein shawl with a pretty decent size, because from this triangle point I'm going to decrease. There you go. And here's how it looks in the linen quill. I really love it. I think it just adds a nice natural look without losing the texture too much. When with that? And yeah, so I didn't have time to finish this sample, but I'm going to knit slowly on it. It is really relaxing knit to process, to work on. You don't have to process too much while you're following the repeat. I don't know why he does that. He just goes along on himself, like, and is he coming back? And yeah, so this is my little gift to you this year. I hope you like it. It has been really well received on Ravelry, and I'm super grateful for it. Free patterns obviously get more visibility and hype than paid for patterns, but to that extent it was the first time for me that a pattern seemed to receive so much love, and I'm so very grateful. I'm very happy you like it, and it's very easy to knit and quick. So yeah, I hope you enjoy this little project. I do believe it will look good with variegated or speckled yarns as well, because you can see that the heathered effect is not destroying the texture completely. So yeah, I do think that it would look nice. Maybe not like a crazy variegated, no, you're just gonna lose a bit of the texture effect, but it can be fun. And if you are using something more solid, just get this really nice vertical ridges. I don't know, for some reason it just looks kind of like a Roman sculpture to me. But yeah, this is Mara. And that's it with all the patterns that I needed to show you. Can she stop? And I have a few finished projects, personal finished projects that I wanted to share with you as well. What up? And the first one, I believe you've seen me work on it in September, was a test knit that I did for Rebecca Clow, the Crabea, and this is my other sweater, which I wanted to show you finished because I absolutely love it. So this is a top-down raglan, which is worked in an all-over thorn stitch, which is a slip stitch motif. So you're only using one color at a time, and you're like basically slipping, increasing, decreasing stitches, and it just makes this really nice star-like pattern. This was so fun to knit. I loved the texture. It was really engaging and still being simple. I've knitted on it while I was on the train to the Knit Eat festival in Lyon in September, or in October. No, it was in September. And I just didn't see the train ride past because I basically worked the entire body on the train, and it was just so much fun. It's very easy. Don't be afraid of it because it's so intuitive. You can't really mess it up, because if you upset yourself, you're gonna see that it's just not possible what you're trying to do. If you're not doing the correct stitch at the right spot, it just does not work, and it just makes a really intuitive fan effect with your stitches of the different colors that it's really easy for you to see where you are. And the setup might be a little bit more complicated because you need to increase to make the round neck shaping, at the same time start the raglan shaping, mota, which is done really cleverly using lifted increases, and basically it makes this really neat line here, which is a beautiful detail, really clever. Because basically what you're seeing, those white and black V's, they are not a stitch. They are one leg of a stitch that's adjacent, that has been lifted while you're doing the lifted increases. And it just makes this, and it's absolutely beautiful. The original design has a folded neckline. I didn't do a folded neckline, I just did a normal neckline, because I kind of have a problem with a folded neckline with thicker yarns. For some reason, it just looks odd to me. It's way good, but if it's thicker than that, I don't quite like the fold. I don't know why. I need to cure myself of it. Like I cured myself of the bubble, like weariness. I think I should cure myself of the folded thing, because it is really nice. I think it looks really neat. It's just that when I'm wearing it, I kind of feel like I'm like, you know, like some sort of Lego toy, and that my head has just been plopped in. Hello again. Where? And then you work the sleeve, and the sleeve has a center double decreases, which is not as neat, but I may not have done it right. Oui. You have everything you need. You have more than you need. You have, in fact, a ton of toys and cat trees and places that costed so much money, and you just don't care. He is way too cute. So, absolutely love it. And I used Double Sunday from Sandnes Garn, which is their Merino, which is really soft. It's quite dense of a knit because of the slip stitches, so it's gonna be one of my warmer sweater, which is why I went for a merino, because it's not as warm. But mine is quite dense. I think the original design is made in a BFL Masson blend, which is a blend that I love. I have a cardigan in it, and it's more airy and thing, but I kind of like the softness and more crisp definition of this. It just gives it a very retro mood. And I knitted in black and white as well, because clearly I was in a black and white mood. This is the almond colorway and the sailor in the dark colorway, which is just black basically. When I was picking colors for this, I just really wanted it in black and white. And my other option was like bright pink and bright orange together, because I think it would look amazing. So please do it before I do it myself. And yeah, I really like the yarn. I didn't have any issue with it splitting. I thought that it was bouncy but still pretty woolly. I really liked it. I'm gonna use it again and see how it is. I think the pilling, I've worn this a lot, okay? I think the pilling under the sleeve, I don't know if you can see, is pretty reasonable for a merino. You can see here a bit. What do you think, Marta? So yeah, I'm super happy with this project. I really love it. It was super fun to knit. I love the finished fit. I do have a tighter upper arm than what I think was intended, but it's comfortable. My problem is usually that it's too tight, because again, like I said, I have wider upper arms compared to the standard for my bust, and usually it's way too tight. Actually, this was good. This was pretty decent. I didn't have to do any modifications, and it fits very well. I'm really happy with it. So that is it for the Alder sweater. Next up, I have a couple of socks to show you, and so they've been worn, but I've just washed them, so they should still be decent. These are so much fun. These were my Halloween socks. So this is the Femme Wapper pattern by Lysandre Hourdin. So she's a French designer. She only designs socks, I think, and she loves colorwork socks. Her pattern is available in English, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe I'm imagining it, but I think so. in any case, it's a chart, you know. I mean, if non-English speakers can follow English patterns, the opposite is also true. I've followed a Norwegian pattern in the past, although lots of people follow Japanese patterns, which don't involve a lot of text, and that's kind of it's a colorwork socks, right? And in the design, she has 3 charts, 3 different socks designed. This is the first one. So they're worked cuff down, and you have this fun Halloweeny colorwork design on top of the leg. You increase stitches here, you decrease stitches here, and then you work a fun stripe pattern. And you have a heel flap and gusset. The pattern has you do it's really convenient to point with this. The pattern has you do a garter edge on the heel flap. I don't like that. I know for a lot of people it's actually easier to pick up stitches from the garter edge. For me, absolutely not. It really doesn't work for me, and I have no problem picking up from a slipped stitch edge, so that's what I do. But yeah, and then you do these fun stripes. I have just carried my yarns and I've crossed it. I've loosely twisted my yarns, like I've twisted the orange in the middle of the purple stripe, and I've caught the purple in with the orange stripe, so that I didn't have to cut it every time. And I'm pretty happy with, like, of course there's a color jog, because I didn't want to bother fixing it. I think you could, even though there's like 1 row stripe, and so it doesn't work. But I'm pretty happy that it's not too tight, and that it's actually making a pretty neat effect, despite me carrying the yarns. And you know, when you're making stripes, sometimes the transition is not great, and this is not tighter than the rest of the sock, not looser, there's no irregular stitches, and it's very nice. And the design was so much fun to knit, the colorwork. I think it's really smart to have the stripe, because like, I'm a lazy person, and if I do something fun on the leg, then the rest of it is gonna be basic. But I think that these sort of stripe, they really make the design as a whole, and I really appreciate that she took the time to design like the entire thing, because I think it really complements each other, and it just makes something a little bit more engaging. The colorwork itself is really nice. You have some floats to catch, obviously. You can see that this one is poking out, or is it a yarn end? There is no no, this is a float that is being rebellious. Go away. Anyway, when you're catching floats, it's always nice, whenever possible, to catch your float on a stitch of the same color of the yarn that you're catching. So for example, here you can see around the nose of the pumpkin, you have like 1 long line of orange in the middle here, so you need to catch your black yarn. So what I did is that I caught the black yarn on the eye, and this means that you can't see the float that's being caught, because it's, even if it shows through on a stitch that's the same color, so it's fine. But when you don't have a choice, like here, you see I had to catch my orange yarn, but I didn't have any orange stitches to anchor it. And so basically that's when it shows through. But very fun. I really need to knit more colorwork socks, because it's so much fun. I added a ton of it to my queue, a lot of them by Stone Knits, obviously. It's just so much fun. So this is the pattern number 1 in the pattern. And then I made this mixing chart number 2 and 3. So the beginning with the cats is chart number 2, and then after this, in the original design, there are little spiders, which I didn't like as much, so I took the ghosts, which are from chart number 3, and the ghosts have skulls, so it's skulls and ghosts for the 3rd pattern. So I just mixed chart numbers 2 and 3. I adjusted a bit the number of rows that you should that I knitted here so that it's the same height basically, and a similar type of stripes. And again, so much fun. I really like the ghosts, how they're like, it's great. So of course I have not of course, but I have a pair for each. Like I'm only showing you one of each. I don't have anything against wearing mismatched socks. It's just that I had so much fun making this that I just really wanted complete pairs. So I have an orange pair and a purple pair. And yeah, these were really fun to knit. I'm really happy that I made them for this Halloweeny season. And hopefully I will be making a lot more colorwork socks because it's just great. I have used the yarn that is recommended in the pattern, which is Filcolana Arwetta, which is a Merino nylon sock yarn basic thing with the great color range, which makes it super cool for colorwork. It's affordable. It's a yarn that I personally really like. It wears well for socks for me again, but again, I don't wear my sock, like I wear my socks a lot, but I don't damage them that much. It just depends how you walk, how many, like I work from home, so I don't wear shoes, you know. Though I do wear them in shoes, not as often as I would if I were to actually wear shoes every day. And yeah, Arwetta works well for me. As you can see, I've worn them quite a lot and I've washed them twice. I wash my socks in the washing machine, by the way. I just put them in a clothes bag, and I put them. I have a have a great washing machine. I love it. When we moved in this house last year, exactly 1 year ago, in fact, the washing machine was the only thing that worked. Everything else that we got, everything else in our lives was messed up, but the washing machine was great from the start. So I can really choose the temperature and the spin. So I just put them at 30 degrees, spin 1000, and that works well. I put them in a mesh bag, like my underwear, basically separately, and I put a color catcher thing on it, and it's just, I've been doing this for years now, and it's fine. It's great. They're not damaged or anything. I did it with non-superwash with the Mondim as well. They've gone through and it's fine. So yeah, but the Arwetta really reacts well to being washed. Anyway, that is it for this project, and I have one last project that I want to show you, which I finished recently, which is another test knit that I don't believe you've ever seen here, and it is the Pride and Pearls cardigan from Veronica Lindberg, which is Kutuvakika. Listen, I've fallen in love with this design as soon as she shared it. So when she called for testers, I was like, yes, no, not the clothes on the alpaca yarn, sir, absolutely no. So, I mean, my fault for having something that has dangly bits. So this is a drop shoulder cardigan, which has this the drop at the back, you know, this line which sits at the back of the shoulder. So you start with the back and you have this pattern of bubbles, again, in diamond shapes and little cables, and the rest of the garment is in this mistake rib thing, which is really fun to work. Every time I see this rib, I see it worked in a different way. You can do this with slip stitches, with 2x2 ribbing that you just stagger like this, and this is 3x1 ribbing. Essentially, you knit 3 purl 1 every row, and you just offset so that you have always one knit stitch and always one purl stitch, and that the other 2 stitches are just alternating knit and purls. And it's a really delightful fabric. It's really squishy. It blocks out well. You need to stretch it a bit. And yeah, so you work the back, then you pick up stitches for the fronts, and you work the fronts with a round neck shaping. At the underarm you join everything, you work the body, and there's a very long twisted rib hem to make kind of a blousey effect. Then you pick up stitches around the armholes to work the sleeves in the rib texture. They're straight, and again very long twisted rib cuff. I really liked how the decreases here for the balloon effect, they really blend into the two textures. See, there's a knit two together and a purl two together, and they just really merge as well. And then the finishing touches, which I think are really delightful. They're really original, and yet they're fairly easy to work if you've done similar things. The first thing is the button band. I'm trying really hard not to annoy you with the I-cord. Is the double knit button band. So like this one, basically it's knitted perpendicularly. It's just a bit fine. It's just very small. And then you have the collar, which is picked up all around and is folded down, and you sew it down here, and it's twisted rib. The way I do folded things like this, I don't bind off the stitches because that's always been way too tight for me. I just keep the live stitches and I whip stitch them to the base. That's how I do folded things. Yeah, binding off and sewing, or you can also exceptional. I've put him such a neat little spot there with the bed. He has one of my shawls, so it smells kind of like us, and he feels like he doesn't have to stay on me, and it's next to the radiator and there's a window. It's delightful, and he went there on his own, and I'm very happy. I just want him to be able to relax without necessarily clinging to us, because it's not nice for him either. But yeah, fantastic progress. So yeah, basically I whip stitch here. You can also as you go, you know, you can knit together. You can pick up a stitch from the base and knit together and bind off. That also is very tight for me, so I just whip stitch the live stitches, and it's nice and neat. And then you work an I-cord tie, which you insert here at the base. This was so fun. Again, really enjoyed working it. The test knit was a bit chaotic because there was a couple mistakes, but the thing is, I was very surprised. It was my first time actually seeing a pattern from Veronica Lindberg. She really holds your hands. She is really detailed. She gives a lot of guidance, and that is really nice. So this makes it basically a patience knit and not so much a difficult knit at all. So yeah, I am quite happy with my project. I do think I should have gone a size up. My measurements are good. I had the right gauge, but I think I would have preferred more ease. Now the thing, I'm gonna wear it. The thing is, I also need to figure out what outfit to wear it with, because I don't think it looks good with my lighter denim colors. So I need to find solutions. I have used Longlust Alpaca Merino, which is 50% alpaca and 50% merino wool, which is untangled. Which means that it's probably going to relax a bit with time. So I might win what I've lost by not sizing up. I've worked size M, so my bust is 95 centimeter now. So I have about 14 centimeter ease. And I think I would have liked more. It would have fitted my style a bit more. See, I don't think that looks good. But yeah, so the other thing is that my buttons are too big. So we use snap buttons, that is in the pattern, which is also a detail that I really like. Because you have a double stockinette thing where you sew the buttons. You can't see because your seam is on the inside, so that's really clever. But my buttons are too big, I think. They're 15 millimeter. I believe in the pattern she calls for 13, and you see what it does, and that's because my buttons are too big, and so they're very close to the edge. When a button band is doing this, there can be several reasons. One that I see most is I don't know why you're so low suddenly. One that I see most is that the buttons are too close to the edge. For me, my experience is that the buttons should be at worst in the middle of the button band. Basically, the closer they are to the body, the neater it's gonna be. It's not very beautiful to have the buttons here and then a huge chunk of empty rib here. So I tend to put them in the middle. But I often see that if buttons are too close to the edge, that's where it does this. And so what's happening, it's not that bad. It's not too bad that I'm going to buy other buttons and redo it. No, I will just keep it like this. What's happening is that the button band is so thin, because you see there is 2 stitches of stockinette here, but the actual button band is only, where is it? Here. It's only this. That is the button band. So my buttons actually are occupying the entire width of the button band. So I probably would have been good with 10 millimeter buttons. I think the pattern calls for 13, but yeah. So you can see how it all looks. Yeah, I'm really happy with it. And we'll see if it loosens up. So I was telling you about the yarn. I used Landlust Alpaca Merino, which is 50% alpaca, 50% merino, which is one of my favorite yarns. I really love that blend of fibers because you get the drape and the halo of the alpaca, but you have the structure of the merino. And this is the colorway 435, and it's more green than what you see. It's more of a petrol, really. So that is it for this project. So the pattern has been released actually last week, and yeah, I believe that the designer is working on a video tutorial. She often makes those like step by step to guide you through each construction step, which is really cool and makes it really accessible if you need some visual guidance. But yeah, this was a really satisfying project. You see, I do have some ease. I wish I had more at the upper arm, but you know, that's it. That's that. It's still okay. And I just need to. I do not own black jeans. I do, but they're very loose and baggy, and I'm not sure that would work. She's wearing it on a dress, I think, in her pattern pictures. That might be nice. I need to see if I have a dress that with the color that would fit nicely. So yeah, that's it for my personal finished project that I wanted to share with you. I have a couple, no, I have more than a couple. I have a few work in progress or future plans that I want to share with you to finish this podcast, which is going to be very long. Since I kept cutting the video, I don't know how long it's going to be, but yeah. I'm going to start with something that is almost finished, and I thought I would show it to you now because it's a gift and I'm not gonna have it with me anymore after the holiday. This is the... oh, I was looking for that pencil. This is the Juniper vest from Joan Ho, which is knitwear by Joan, and she released a book recently which is Cable Knit Style, which I adore. I love most of the patterns in it. I do plan to make a couple others for myself, and I really love it. It's size inclusive. The charts are really nice and big and clear. It's great. There's a variety of designs. If you love texture and cables, and if you love thicker knits, because she uses a lot of decay or more or thicker yarns, I think you would love it. And I've been knitting basically the moment I received the book, the same day my mother texted me, sending me a picture of a cabled vest and said, hey, could you make me something like this? I was like, fate. So I showed her the juniper vest and she really liked it. So this is a cabled v-neck vest with moss stitch at the center and these cables and bubbles. I'm using my bubble method, but in the pattern they're actually normal bubbles that you knit back and forth. I just didn't want to do that. So yay. So I've changed the construction a bit so that I could tailor it to my mother's taste. It's knitted from the bottom up, so you initially start with the hem, which is split, and then you join in the round and you work the body, etc. I've done a provisional cast on here, and I've just knitted the whole vest. I've done the v-neck edges, the armhole edges. There's a really neat detail here with some decreases so that it just curves up, which I think is really neat. And now my mother has tried it yesterday and we have determined what length she would like for the ribbing. Because the thing is, my mother and I, although we have about the same height and the same bust circumference, we have very different body types, and so I can't use myself as a guide for body length, because she always needs about 15 centimeter longer body than I do. And so we measured how much ribbing she would like, and so I just started this. I just picked up my stitches from my provisional cast on and I'm doing the split hem. I've started with the back one and it's just 1 by 1 rib. Now my problem is, this is all the yarn I have left. I did have 200 meters more than the recommended meterage. Now the problem is I'm using Rerum Natura's Gilead, which is a woolen spun yarn, and I just know that whenever I use woolen spun, the yarn usage amount is so weird, because those yarns are so light and fluffy and they have so much, like Gilead has 250 meters per 100 grams, but it knits up as a good worsted Aran. I don't like it as a DK weight gauge at all, despite that meterage. So it's just always a bit confusing, the yarn usage. I think my row gauge is not so far off. I did lengthen the body by 3 centimeters. Does this justify? I'm gonna probably use over 300 meters more. And I ordered a new bowl. Now the thing is, the Rerum Natura is very close to me. So usually when I order from them, it gets there like the next day. But this is the holidays and I've been looking and I haven't seen if they mentioned that they were on a break and that they were not shipping, which would be like, I hope that they do. I hope that they do have a break and they don't ship sometime over the holidays, but I don't know when. So I don't know if I'm gonna get it or if I'm gonna have to finish it later in the new year. I'll see. But this has been really nice to knit. I've been missing cables really, because I always kind of do a mixture of cables and lace, and just pure cables is so satisfying to just see it form. I always work my cables without a cable needle because I can't be bothered to use an accessory. And yeah, so this is the juniper vest. This is the colorway Cedre, by the way. Cedre. And the I've made one modification is when I picked up stitches for the collar, I picked up way less stitches than instructed, especially on the back neck here, because it was way too wide. but that is again sort of personal tension, roll gauge, stitch gauge ratio thing that may vary when you're knitting ribbing as well compared to the main fabric. So yeah, it's something that happens a lot. So yeah, I hope that I get the other ball of yarn tomorrow and that I can finish this for the holiday. I'm filming this on Monday the 18th. Let's see. Well, if not, she has seen it. She knows I'm making it. It's fine. But yeah, really, really fun. The pattern is very clear, straightforward, not a lot of extra shaping. There's no short rows, for example. It's a vest. No, it's fine. And yeah, I can't wait to block it and see it not be so stiff. And hopefully my mother will like it. She tried it on, but she had like a big silly sweatshirt under it, and so I couldn't really see how it was going to be if she wears it on top of a nice shirt or something at work. But yeah, this has been mostly what I've been knitting on in December. And I have, what do I have? I have another work in progress that I want to show you, and then I have a plan. So I've signed up for a test knit. Do I have time for it? No. Could I resist? Also no. Again, it's a design that I've seen on the designer's Instagram, and I just could not want to make it. This is the Endellion sweater by Sophie Ochera, which is a French designer. She mostly makes, like she actually sells the knitwear that she makes, but she also has a few patterns, and they're all fun color work stuff. And this sweater, love it. I love it. I love the color, so I proceeded to completely copy her color choices. And I am knitting this in Ulysse from Dagian Natura. The same yarn as the previous project, but the sport weight version. Now, the original design is worked in a worsted weight thing. Now, there is only 4 sizes that go from 100 centimeter to 160 centimeter finished bust. That is because the color work is just big motifs, and she didn't fill up with anything, so there's only 4 sizes that span a pretty good range still. And the designer told us that we could adapt the gauge to get in between sizes, because the thing is, because it's such a big chunky motif, there is 20 centimeter between each size. And so if we want to have the correct ease that we feel like, the model is wearing it with about 10 centimeter ease, which is kind of what I wanted as well. We need to adjust the gauge, and she gave us free range to do this, and all the testers are using a variety of yarn weights, which will give you a good idea of what you can do. Basically, I've come to the conclusion that if you want to use sport weight, you size up twice, you go 2 sizes up. If you want to use DK weight, you size up once. Of course, this depends on your gauge. I'm talking, for example, so the original pattern is 18 stitches per 10 centimeters, so that's worsted weight. That will give you the measurements of the pattern. If you use DK weight, you get, let's say, 21 stitches per 10 centimeter. You can size 1 size up. And if you're using sport weight like I am, I'm getting a 24 stitch per 10 centimeter gauge, and I'm knitting 2 sizes up. So I'm knitting size 3, which should be a finished measurement of 140 centimeter at the pattern gauge. But with my gauge, I should get about 105 centimeter, which will give me 10 centimeter ease. I hope you're taking notes, because there will be an exam at the end of this. Anyway, of course, this does not work so well if you're at the extreme size range. Basically, if you want a much smaller size, you're gonna have to use a finer yarn. And if you need a larger size than 160, which is 63 inches, I think, or 62. I think it's right at the limit. Or is it 64? Right there, somewhere there, I'm sorry, inches, right? If you're at the end of that size range, you're gonna have to use at least worsted. And then I don't know if you want to use thicker yarn than that to get a bigger size if you need a 70-inch finished circumference, for example. I'm not there yet on the pattern, but once I've split for these sleeves, I will see how easy it would be to add stitches to perhaps achieve a wider burst circumference without using a bulky weight yarn, you know. And maybe you can fill up with some of the smaller motif, because so my swatch that you see here, this is the sleeve pattern. So this is a 3-color color work design, but you can totally make it using 2 colors, and I think it would look fantastic. In fact, I have bought yarn to make a second version using only 2 colors in DK weight, and it's a navy and a pink, and I want to do that. I think I have a delivery. I sent my partner to get it. They are shelves for you to climb on the bookshelves. We're gonna mount them for you. You better like them. I'm gonna build him some sort of stairs. So, 3 colors for this version. Like I said, I absolutely copied the sample designs. When I saw the colors, I knew that I wanted this color combo. So this is Jeunet, which is this goldish green color, Fusain, which is the black, and Poivre Blanc, which is the white pepper, which is the cream gray one. So you start with the color, which is worked in 1x1 rib, so you have a bit of a contrast color and then the main color. Oh yeah, you can also completely switch which is the main color and which is the contrast color. So I think the designer is making another sample where the main color of her body is reversed compared to the main color of the sleeves. I've seen some testers do it as well. It's super versatile pattern in terms of how you can arrange the colors. Like I said, you can make it very simple with 2 colors. But if you're using, and even with 2 colors, you can switch the background and foreground. And if you use 3 colors, it's even more possibilities. It's really fun. Anyway, the pattern instructs you to do like an Italian cast off. No, absolutely not. I just made my German twisted cast on. I had to adjust the stitch count because since I'm using a sport weight, I casted on a few more stitches and then I caught up to the stitch count that I needed at the end. It's very easy to do. And it's 1x1 rib. I flipped mine. So 1x1 rib can look like this, basically, usually the right side. If your yarn is a bit woolly, which is the case for Ulysse, again, it's a woolen span, it just looks very spread and not neat. So what I did is once I finished the rib, I made a short row so that I could flip it and so that I would have the wrong side of the ribbing facing the right side of the sweater, because usually the wrong side is neater. It's because usually people, when they make a purl stitch, the previous knit is off, and so if you flip it, it just does that. And so I will flip again at the cuff and at the hem, making a short row so that I have this neater ribbing on the outside. And I literally just made like 8 rows before I needed to focus on the Christmas gifts from my mother, the cabled vest. So it's a raglan. And so I've used lifted increases. I've decided to use lifted increases, and I caught my floats here poorly, so you can see them through. Lifted increases, the thing is, it is really invisible, so it just makes kind of a flat stockinette look. But you can use make one left and make one right if you prefer. So it's especially bad at the beginning of the round, because the thing is, when you're using 3 colors, the possibility of you having to catch floats is higher because you get more space between each use of color. So yeah, I did not do a very good job of catching my floats at this point, but I trust that the yarn is gonna bloom and be okay. So yeah, I am going to resume working on this week, and I'm really excited. I really want to finish the yoke and try it on and make sure it's all right. And yeah, I'm gonna switch needles, I think, to be on a wider needle. There's a bit of a texture here with some pearl rows. There are short rows at the back. So yeah, I'm gonna be knitting on this afternoon, I think, because I want to make as much progress as possible. It's really engaging, it's really fun. The thing is, the sleeve pattern is actually fairly intuitive, and I don't need to catch floats here because the maximum length is 7 stitches skipped from one color to the next, and that's okay for me. It really depends on your personal tension, and I've tend to notice that it's either of the extremes, right? Either people need to catch their floats so often, like almost every stitch, or they need to catch their floats very, very rarely, which is more my case. The less I catch my floats, the better tension I have. So it means that my wrong side is not looking fantastic, especially on the body where it's more messy. It's less of a regular motif, as you can see. But this is why I'm using a woolen span, very woolly yarn, because it's just going to get patted down. And I absolutely love the fabric of my swatch. It's just so nice, and it's quite thick, obviously, because you have the 3 colors and the double layer of floats. And another advantage of using sport weight is that it's not gonna be so warm, because yeah, worsted weight with 3 colors, I don't know when I would have been able to wear this. But yeah, so the test knit is due early January, so I believe that the pattern will be released soonish. Honestly, I don't know if I will finish on time, but it's fine. With the designer, we've already went through the pattern quite a lot and fixed the charts, fixed the increase mentions, because the increase mention were make ones increases, but the thing is, the chart were showing lifted increases. Yeah, so there are basically 2 big categories of increases: the increases that use a stitch when you make the increases, and then the increases that create a stitch out of nowhere. And this matters because if you're having a pattern to follow, if when you're making your increases you're eating a stitch on your chart, it's not the same that if your increase is instantly added on the chart and adds a new case on your chart. It just, if you're substituting the wrong kind of increases, you're gonna offset your motif. And the chart initially was referring to make one increases, but the increases that were shown in the chart were using 1 stitch, so lifted increases, for example, or knit front back, for example. So yeah, I just talked to the designer about this so that she could switch to the right abbreviation if she didn't want to modify the chart. But of course, like I said, you can change the increase that you use. Just keep in mind that if you're changing the type of increase, if you're substituting an increase that uses a stitch for an increase that doesn't, or vice versa, you're gonna have to knit 1 stitch more or less before the increase so that you don't offset the design. Anyway, I've chosen to go with lifted increases just so that we could have an example of how it would look, because I also think that that's what she did in the original sample, because you really see just a flat line. There's no clear raglan shaping on her sample. Other testers have done make one increases. It seems that none of the increase is helping with hiding the floats if you're caching them too close to the increases, which is what I did at the beginning. Both increases can look bad, basically. So yeah, that's a preference on which type of increase you use, and it's not necessarily going to help you with your floats. So that's it for this little project, which I need to go look back into the testers group, because some people have been using beautiful colors. There's a mostly blue version. There's someone making it in green, bright pink and navy, and it looks very fun. I have a ton of yarn for it, so I don't run out this time. And yeah, next up, let's talk about this. This is a design that I'm working on. It's going to be released at the beginning of January, and I have one sock. Basically, this is gonna be my first design in my sock collection for next year, and I wanted to try and play a bit with fine details or fine textures. So there's gonna be intricate lace that merges into things, etc. Or actually I'm gonna use a mistake rib as well. I just need to figure out the finishing touches on that. And this is a really fun texture which only uses knits and purls, no cabling. And it's just the fact that you alternate between the ribbing and the garter stitch, it just makes this wave. And it's really fun. And I've done a cuff that merges into it. I'm actually just starting the test knit for this design today. I need to select testers. I got so many applications. I'm gonna have to draw randomly, which is how I select my testers, by the way. I don't do first come, first serve, because I think that's a bit unfair for people who are not glued to their phones, or if you're living in a different time zones. And I don't necessarily require people to have a public profile or to take nice pictures, etc., because that's an advertising system that I'm not asking my testers to do. So I just draw randomly when I need to select testers, because I just can't have 500 people on the test at the same time. And since I run several tests at once, it's a bit overwhelming. So I need to launch the test for this one. And yeah, it will be released in early January. I used Lana Grossa Melon Weight Seta yarn. Here. This is a different color, which is this one. And so interesting, which is why I wanted to talk about this project. This is a wool nylon silk blend. I can't tell that they're silk. And like, there's a slight halo, but in terms of softness, shininess, I wouldn't guess that there were silk in those socks, honestly. Compared to, for example, the Regia silk, which is very shiny and peels a bit more because of that softness, or Jowl silk, Long Yarn's Jowl silk. Also, you can see there's silk a bit more. This one, not really. And I think that it's because it's wool and not merino. So it looks like, if I like to the touch, they feel almost exactly like Filcolana Arwetta or other merino sock yarns. So I kind of feel like if you blend wool, just regular wool, and that sounds mean, regular wool, I mean non-merino wool, the sock yarn kind of wool that is used in a lot of commercial sock yarns, and silk, you kind of get the same effect as if it was merino, basically. And that's nice, however, is that they're not necessarily more expensive because of the silk content. They're a bit less than 10 euros a 100-gram ball, so it's the same price, for example, as the Merino sock yarns that I was talking about. And the color range is fun. This is colorway 18, and I'm gonna use all of these for the other socks next year. I have 3 other design plans, and I have an idea to sort of play with stripes, but I don't know if it's gonna work because it might be problematic around the cuff sizing. So I'll see. But these will be the Mabel socks because I don't know. I really like that stitch pattern. The thing is, I have plans to make a sweater with this stitch pattern. It's just so fun and intuitive because you only need to count the garter lines here, you see, and then you know you need to switch. It's not so big of a repeat. I was able to size it up and down so it would fit on different stitch counts, so there will be like 6 sizes in this design. So yeah, I want to make a sweater with this texture. But it's not gonna be for a while. And I like to use the textures before on smaller objects. If I can't right now cast on the big one, I still get to play with the texture a bit on a smaller scale. And so that's why I used this one for this little sock design. As usual, heel flap. But there will be a German short row option on the pattern, rounded toe, and yeah. So I need to make the second one. I might make it over the holidays or not. We'll see. And the next thing I want to show you is just swatches. Let's finish this never-ending podcast on swatches and thoughts. I've signed up to test knit the Citrine jumper from Vernit, Ines Oliveira. I don't know in which order those vowels are anymore. I really like her designs, and this one especially. Outstanding. Beautiful. And yeah, I'm swatching. I'm trying to find the right yarn. So the main fabric of the sweater, so it's a raglan sweater with a nice cable rib detail on the raglan, on the neck, on the hem and cuffs, and the main body is knit actually in a slip stitch pattern, which is the same that is mostly used on heel flaps, which means that gauge is a bit difficult to obtain. My initial thought was to use this, which is good wool from Pearl Soho. This is the colorway Purple Pansy, which is so beautiful, right? And this, you see, this is the neck. This is going to be like the neck. And this is the main fabric with the slip stitch. This swatch is too tight, which makes sense. The pattern calls for a DK weight. Good wool is a sport weight. It's a fine sport weight. It's 350 meters per 100 grams, so it's almost a fingering weight, honestly. I'm getting 25 stitches per 10 centimeter. And I don't know that I can use a larger needle size because it's already, I don't know. I would really like to use this yarn. So I think what I'm gonna try is I'm going to make another swatch like this, going up a needle size, and see if I can get gauge. The gauge is 22 stitches per 10 centimeters. So this is like I said, 25. Will I get there if I size one needle up? I'm afraid that it's gonna look too see-through, especially on the cable section, see? Yeah, I'm not sure. I made this swatch then, which is made in BoucleLaine's Roussin Alpaga, which is a very woolly wool from Brittany, a blend of alpaca and wool. This is a proper DK. I'm getting 20 stitches per 10 centimeter, and it felt already a bit dense when I knitted it, so I don't know that I can use this one. because I don't think I want it. It doesn't look so dense now that it's washed, and it's quite drapey. So I think I could get gauge, but it would be pretty dense when I knit it. I don't know. Then I used this, which is woolly knit, the Merino. So it comes as a cone, and this is a 4-ply, but I've hold it double, and I'm getting a DK weight, and this I'm getting gauge. I'm at like 21.5 stitches. It's fine. And I like the fabric. The thing is, I did not necessarily want that sweater to be blue, and that's the color that I had in mind. Like, I love this blue, of course, but yeah, I've been knitting lots of blues and greens at the moment, and I kind of wanted something a bit different, you know. But that's the only merino color I have from woolly knit. The thing is, okay, I don't necessarily mind if it's more airy, because it's gonna be lighter and it's gonna mean more wearability for me, because I get hot too easily. But I still would want it to look good, and I'm wondering if this is not the limit of the how open it can be. I will try to swatch with a bigger needles and see. But yeah, this is a beautiful garment. I am going to start it, I think, maybe next week, actually. The deadline is until February. So I'm not going to start it right now, so I have time to figure my swatches out, and see if I can get this to work. I would really like it. I would like that color as well, but knit it denser than this? I don't know that I want. I don't know that I want that. Yeah, it's interesting because the designer used 3mm needles with a DK weight, and she used a BFL Masson blend again, which is quite light and airy. So yeah, the thing is, it's not such a bad idea to use a finer yarn for me, because I'm gonna get the same airiness, but it's not gonna be as warm. Decisions, but yeah, I just thought that these little swatches looked cute, and I wanted to show them to you, to show you what I am working on. I have a couple other projects, but I think you've had enough of me, right? And I think Mota has had enough of me talking alone. So yeah, that's it for this autumn fall recap and plans for the upcoming winter. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching it if you're still here. I wish you a very happy end of the year, and a happy beginning of the next one. I hope that no matter the conditions that may be not so great, I know, for a lot of people, that you're able to rest a bit and enjoy the coming of the winter solstice. Have a lovely rest of the day, evening, etc. I will see you again when we turn to spring in March for the recap of what I've been doing this winter. Thank you so much for watching.